Good morning. We'll be starting up here in about a little over a minute. And while you're waiting, you might want to go ahead and log in if you're interested in doing the polls, www.pollev.com/DavidOrPE. You can also open up the Q&A because we'll be doing some question and answers that way. The chat pod is disabled for you to put things in, but you might want to log into that as well because that's where we'll put links. So you don't have to remember the links for all the things we've talked about in the handout. So again, we'll get started here in about a minute. Okay, so good morning. And again, we're going to get started here. Again, you might want to open up your Q&A pod to do question and answers. Open the chat pod up just because that's where we'll put messages and links, and that way you don't have to type all the long things in. And then we'll be going from there. We also are going to be doing polls at pollev.com/DavidOrPE, and we'll talk more about that as we get going on here this morning. My name is David Orr. I'm the director here with the New York State LTAP Center Corner Local Roads Program, and welcome from the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I'm down here for the Association of Towns meeting and doing this webinar before I head over to the meeting today and do a session over there. Okay, so we're going to get started. Oh, before I forget, we do have those pocket guides. We'll talk a little bit more about those pocket guides and updates we're making to them. And again, you can download copies, or if you want copies, we still have plenty of the current version. And if you're wondering, it's still current. We'll talk a little bit more about that here a little bit too this morning. Now, if you haven't been on one of our webinars before, over in the bottom, open it up. There's your settings, which you can do audio. If you haven't found it, that's where you've got your chat and your raise your hands and things like that. And I will ask you to raise your hands a little bit later on. So we'll have a little bit of fun with that. Okay. And of course, with a single screen, you get used to multiple screens. It's always fun. So this is worth one professional development hour here in New York State, but only the person who is registered gets that credit. So just keep that in mind, and you'll need to have your certificate of attendance. If you're from outside of New York State, you'll need to check with your LTAP center in that state, but this particular work zone session really is aimed at New York State requirements because the requirements in New York are slightly different. So that's something to keep in mind. In fact, interestingly enough, the rules that are used for work zones in New York State outside of New York City actually are slightly different. So I'm actually in a place where some of the things I say today will be not quite as applicable, but they'll be pretty close. So let's do a little welcome here. Let's do some polls. Let's see who you work for. Do you work for a town, a county, a city or village, state or federal, tribal, consultant, contractor? And we've already got a couple of people who are honest and work for the weekend. If you can't access the poll, you can go ahead and put them in the Q&A. That helps me, and I'll tell people how many people put their answers in the Q&A. So we have a person, for instance, from a county, a couple of people from a county who put their thing in. We have a federal person, another town, some state. Okay, consultant. So we get a good blend today. That's actually pretty good. I like to see that. Okay. So again, pollev.com/DavidOrP if you want to participate, because some of them like this are pretty easy, but some of them are a little bit more challenging, and hopefully have a little fun. So what is your title? Are you an administrator? Are you the highway superintendent or commissioner? Are you the engineer? Are you on the field crew? Are you a supervisor of that field crew? Are you a board member? Or none of the above? If you put none of the above, please do me a favor and put in the Q&A what that title is. And then I see a few folks. We got some consultants, some engineers, some superintendents, and a couple of retirees. Okay, that's good to know. So most of you are engineers. Not totally surprised since we're handing out professional development hours, but it's still nice to see we've got a risk management specialist. Hello, Ed. How are you doing today? Okay, cool. And then how long have you been in your current position? So are you somebody who's been there less than a year, 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 11 to 20, or you're a person with gray hair like myself? So let's see what we got here. And I got to slide this out of the way so I can see all the answers. Okay, so we got a bit of a range. Interesting, we have very few folks in the middle in the 3 to 5 range. So we got quite a few in the 5+, and we got quite a few in the 1 to 2. Cool. If you are in your position for less than a year or only a year or two, there are going to be things we talk about you may not have heard. Great. But those people who have more experience, get to know them. Go to meetings, go to association meetings, go to statewide conferences, come to events like here in New York City. Create that network to help answer your questions. It's absolutely vital. Okay? And again, if you can't access the poll site, that's okay. Keep putting them in the Q&A and we'll just add it into the queue. There's a couple where you might not be able to participate as well, but we'll make it work. We're pretty flexible. We know how things are. Okay, let's move on. Where in New York State are you from? So you can type right on here and click. And Paul, where you're located normally in New York, not where you are now, would be useful, Paul. So I saw you in there. Okay, we got some variety of folks here. Okay, and we got somebody typing in Suffolk County. So we get quite a few from Long Island. I would be clicking right in the middle of Manhattan there if I was where I am now, but I would actually, as I told Paul, I actually click back up in Ithaca. So, wow, we got a good variety. I like it. Okay. Okay, so we got a variety of folks, and we have that person who's in their boat in the middle of Lake Ontario. I got good news for you. If you're in Lake Ontario, your work zones are going to be a little different than for the rest of us. Okay. So there are some more of our foundational webinars coming up. We have the work zone one today. We've got purchasing and financing next week, surface and subsurface drainage, and then pavement maintenance. That will finish our spring season, and then we'll be going to our in-person workshop schedule. You'll notice on the schedule, we're all over the state, but we're also doing work zone traffic control a bunch of times, 6 this spring, 3 in the fall. What we're doing today is foundational. We're really covering the basics, but if you really want to get into it, if you really want to understand some of these issues, get to one of these work zone sessions or any of the other workshop sessions that we've got coming up. You can really ask your questions, get into details, and we can only cover so much in a 1-hour session. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward. Okay. Now, again, we have these work zone safety pocket guides and flagger pocket guides that are available. We've got plenty of them. The current version is still valid, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. We are making an update. We hope to be printing that again sometime this year with the changes that are coming down the pike with work zones, both based on the national MUTCD and some state standards as well. We'll talk a little bit about that this morning. Now, in terms of where we stand in terms of some things, the question I always ask myself is, what do signs do? Why do we have signs? Okay. Well, signs are communication tools. They really are. That's their primary purpose. They're really here to communicate. Now, they should be communicating a message to tell the driver what to do. The end is near, that zombies are ahead is not really telling people what to do, unless, of course, they're zombies. But even then, if you really want to do it right, you should tell people what to do. Like, for instance, zombies ahead, turn around, or don't go past this point. Give people better information. And if you're wondering, by the way, this is in Austin, Texas. That barrel monster you saw was in Austin, Texas. I suspect there's some college students in Austin, Texas who a little bit too much fun, but I could be wrong. But I have a cousin who lives down there. Yeah, they have a big school called University of Texas. So signs communicate. They communicate our regulations, they communicate our warnings, they communicate information. And good signage really helps. Now, in terms of general signage, they can also communicate things we don't want to communicate, like we're too lazy to move a stick. We have speed in our own neighborhoods when there's children around. And of course, we don't really know where we're going. Good signage matters. And we always are thinking about the permanent signage, but the reality is work zone signage matters. Okay, so now here's some sidewalk work that's being done in an urban area. You think, well, that's not a work zone. Well, it is, because they're working replacing the sidewalks. And as you can see, they're working on both sides of the road. And when you walk out, that little orange sign says the sidewalk is closed. Use the other side. So we're going to do a poll now. The poll going to answer for me here. I have to cheat. Hang on. I hid the slide on myself. It's my own fault. But I know how to solve the problem because I have that power. It's behaving badly today. Okay, well, we'll go with the one that's on there. Here's a different work zone that you can see driving up the road. What would you do? Where would you go? Okay, so if you're driving up that road, you're in the left lane, the flaggers put you over in the left lane, where are you going to go? Most of you are putting dots where they don't want you to go. And it's confusing because if you look up the road, you'll actually see a road closed sign. What you're supposed to do here is actually go around the corner to that straight up to where that black car is. But people would come up, they'd see the traffic light, they'd see the road closed sign, and they would just sit there. And we really need to communicate well with the public what we expect them to do, because if we don't, we're going to create problems for them. And if we go back, for instance, and we go to the one before, where would you walk here? You'd probably walk in the roadway. Now you can get away with that in a low volume area, but if it's high volume, you got to think about the pedestrians. So really needs to be thinking about communications in terms of the work zone. Here's the entire work zone for some utility work done near my house. It's a piece of yellow tape across the roadway. It's getting dark. And I only got this picture because I took a whole bunch with my camera and finally got this one that showed it a little bit. It's really hard to see. What are we communicating to the public in this case? Really important to have good communication and good signs, because something like this is a misleading message. So think about that. Think about what you would be doing for something like this. Now, of course, so you see memes like this, they're posted. Yes, it's fake, but a little bit of fun is one thing, but we have to communicate good messages. In fact, the new standards on the MUTCD warn about the idea of using too much humor in the signage. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about who is using the work zone, because that might help us in terms of what we're doing for signage. Okay, so who are the work zone users? Tell me, who's using work zones? Let's put some answers in there. We're going to create a Wordle, by the way. If you don't know what a Wordle is, it's those little word maps that show up. And let's see who you think the work zone users are. And people, again, if you can't put it in, just put it in the Q&A and we'll sort of mentally add that into the pool. So we've got workers, pedestrians, drivers, grandparents, everyone, vehicles, bikes. Yeah. A work zone user, yeah, the workers are in there and they're really important. We'll talk about that. The drivers, the pedestrians, everybody, dog walkers. Yeah, my friend was out walking his dog. Yeah, those are all people in a work zone, and we're changing what they're used to. So really important in a work zone to communicate this information really, really well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of these users. Okay, now I've got my list, and as you can see, I've got in here the public, I've got equipment operators, supervisors, and traffic control personnel. I'm sort of grouping them into these four areas because they generally have different points of view when they hit a work zone. The public, well, the traveling public, they just don't want to be slowed down. They know how to go, and they don't want to be slowed down, and a detour or slowing them down just confuses them. Okay, so they really want to get through that work zone really fast, and they want to do it quickly. And while they don't think about it, they want to do it safely. Equipment operators, on the other hand, well, let's be honest, equipment operators focused on getting the job done, as they should be. So they want to keep working without slowing down. A well-done work zone will actually help them there. And here's a case where maybe it could be a little bit better. I'm a little worried about where that flagger is standing. We'll talk about why that's really a bad location later on. The supervisor for the job, and there's Colonel Sanders supervising some pothole filling in, yes, you guessed it, Austin, Texas. Well, they want to get the job done as fast and as cheaply as possible. And this is a little different focus than the equipment operators and the truck drivers and the folks doing the work. And then finally, of course, the people doing the flagging and the traffic control. They really want to be able to operate a work zone easily with no safety issues. But you and I both know if you've done much with anything with a work zone, flagging traffic is either really exciting or really boring. It's that middle ground, which we'd like to have. It doesn't happen that often. This guy probably should be in a little bit better place and maybe paying just a little bit more attention. But we can talk about that. So no one wants to be inconvenienced or placed in harm's way. That's really the ultimate goal of a good work zone. And it's a balancing act. Now, in terms of the traveling public, um, they want to make sure they can get through the site. They want to be able to see things. They've got their cars that they're dealing with. They don't want to be slowed down. Okay. So we got the traveling public with their cars. We've got buses that might have to get through a site, both a city bus and a school bus. Okay. So when you set up your work zone, you may want to think about that, what buses we've got to deal with, maybe even work with the bus companies to move things around. Of course, trucks have big turning radii and they're going to be different that you got to deal with. You got bicycles, especially in urban areas, but more and more rural areas. I mean, certainly I worked in Yates before I was with Cornell, and there were a lot of bicyclists, both people who were doing it for recreational and the Mennonite community that you had to deal with. Pedestrians, they're very vulnerable when they're outside their vehicles, so you have to think very differently about dealing with pedestrians. Okay, so different users have different needs. People who are handicapped in one way or another. We have to think about not only just meeting the requirements of the ADA, but just really thinking about doing the right thing. One of the cool things about, if you think about people who are in a walker, in a wheelchair, maybe are colorblind, you think about those people, you actually set up a good work zone for the pedestrians, for the mom walking their kids or the people walking their dogs. So really, if you think about those users, those vulnerable users, you think about everybody. So I think it's actually a pretty good way to do it. Now, in terms of cars, you got to give them notice that they can see at the speeds they're traveling. A little sign like this might work in a parking lot, but on a main road, not so much. Or this one's even worse. They closed off the exit from a parking lot. They put this little sign up that said exit via the state route. Now we got to communicate a little bit better. We got to have bigger signage. Okay. In terms of the buses, again, you may want to work with the bus community, and remember, they're going to have a different curve. Don't make the lanes too narrow. You may have to widen things up. In terms of the trucks need to get in and out of the work zone, but you've also got through trucks. There might be a dump truck like this. It might be a semi-tractor. So keep that in mind. And again, of course, the bicyclist, don't you love it when you see a sign put right where the bicyclist or the pedestrian wants to walk? You're going to now force that bicyclist back out into traffic. So think about these things. And again, good signage helps everybody out. And by the way, one thing about pedestrians go where they go. You almost have to do a little bit extra signage if you really want to keep them out of a particular area, because they'll go where they think they need to go. Through, around, diagonal, just keep that in mind. I mean, here it says pedestrians prohibited. They put up a diagonal sign, but more than a few times I would catch somebody had gone behind the fence line because they thought they needed to go where the truck was. So you got to think about what people do. And of course, for a handicapped person, they may not even realize they're getting into a dangerous zone if you don't prevent them from getting into that area, especially someone who's blind or has limited vision. So keep that in mind. Now, I don't think the video is going to play, and it's actually probably a good thing because I'm not sure about how the strength of the Wi-Fi connection is, but look at this guy. He's going to walk across a main road where the sidewalk has been closed down, and then he walks along the roadway. You have to think about the different users, and you may have to think differently in urban versus rural versus a suburban area in terms of a good work zone. Okay. And again, we'll see. I'm betting the video won't play, but that's because I think I shut them down so I wouldn't break my Wi-Fi, my friends. Yep. But yeah, keep that in mind. Okay. So let's ask ourselves, what are the regulations? What are the requirements that we're supposed to meet for work zones? Well, right now, as of today, currently, there is the National MUTCD from 2009, but it's really short-lived, and the New York State supplement to the National Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD, plus New York State itself, DOT, has added some rules and regulations on top of it. There was a brand new edition of the MUTCD. It was released back at the end of last year, and it has a 90-day window. It will be coming active really, really soon. Okay? I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is the changes really surprisingly aren't as great as you might think. Okay? The bad news is there are some changes coming. So watch this space. We will let you know about the critical ones. But for work zones, the foundational stuff, remember, the foundational webinar, they haven't changed. So those things are still going to be valid, even though we'll be changing first the national, which will become valid, as I say here, I think it's in March, and then the New York State Supplement, which will take about anywhere from 12 months to 2 years to get updated and made changes. The bigger change that you need to be thinking about, though, is New York State DOT is trying to put crash attenuators in all of their work zones, or at least the majority of them, and it's going to be in part of the state standard. So if you're getting federal aid, you're going to need to be thinking about making changes in terms of how you set up a work zone. So that's just something to keep in mind. And again, in a 1-hour webinar, we just don't have the time to really cover those level of detail. Now, the key thing to think about, and this started with the last MUTCD, it's still true. The MUTCD applies for all roads open to public travel. Now, they did make some changes in the next edition in terms of parking lot alleys and stuff that were technically included last time and are no longer included. But again, essentially, if it's a road, treat it as a road and think about how the public's going to use it, okay? But whether you're in the road or not, think about all those users. So do you think this is MUTCD compliant? I mean, I hope nobody does, because what is the person supposed to do? That's the key with good signage. Someone sees it, it's a clear, simple message, it's easy to follow, and it tells them what to do. Yeah, I agree with you, Donna. No, it's not. It really should be telling people where to go next. Give them good information. Sharp bend? Oh, and by the way, it's not reflective. It looks nice and bright during the day, but at night, you can't see it until your lights actually hit it when you get close to it. Luckily, most people knew you had to go to the left here, but really, we should be doing a better job of signing. What would you do there? I mean, what would you do in that particular site? And again, it's active poll. I'm going to pop back over here so you can see the picture real quick for those who want to see the picture. What would you do there instead? Okay, so let's see what you guys have put in there. Okay, reflective left arrow, some chevrons. Yep. So you really need to be think about the use of directional signage. You might even want to go back with an advanced warning sign that lets people know, hey, it's no longer an intersection. It's now essentially a curve. During the work zone period, it's a curve. So yeah, so think about the user and simplify the signage, okay? Because if you don't, what you're going to do is confuse people, and too many messages create problems for folks, okay? So what I would be thinking about is some chevrons, some advanced signage. Technically, that advanced signage should be orange and black, but I'll be honest with you, if you've got a yellow and black in your stack and you can give people good information, you do what you got to do. Make sure you document it. But yeah, technically work zone signs should be orange and black, but make it better signage, make it clear, okay? If you're not sure, by the way, show it to somebody who's not familiar with all the processes and see if they get confused. Show them a picture or show them a drawing. It can actually help quite a bit to make things clear, okay? So keep that in mind. So work zone warning signs, they're supposed to be black on orange. Again, there are some exceptions. There is one major exception that's always yellow and black, and that's a railroad crossing. They're 36 inches in size. I mean, you think, wow, that seems big, but at 55 miles an hour, it's really not that big. In fact, on the interstate, they should be even larger. They need to be at least 1 foot off the ground for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is they're in the ground, they get disrespected, but they also, that you want them to be able to be seen. And for a long-term work zone, you may even want to put them on a permanent mounted sign up at the 5 or 7 feet that you would have, depending whether you're in an urban or rural area. They need to be retroreflective. We say, well, we're not out there at night, but if you're there early in the morning or late at night, especially this time of year in the winter when the sun doesn't come up late and goes to bed early, it needs to be something retroreflective. Plus, it actually helps even during the day to have the sign light come right back to the vehicle. okay? You need to have advance warning, give people time to react. And then one of my biggest pet peeves, remove or turn the sign when it's not needed. Doesn't take much. And we'll talk about that again because it's that important. So here's a good example. I hate to say it, but it's on the Cornell campus. Yeah, bump with pink spray paint. Yeah, probably not enough. Yeah, a lot of times we just put a barrel or two up in an urban area, but a little bit more professional sign to warn people about the bump would go a long ways to keeping respect for the sign. Okay. Everybody who's in a work zone should be wearing high visibility vest. Okay. And safety apparel. And that includes, by the way, the fire and the police when they're not doing uh, actual certain activities. You know, fire police need to have it or someone directing traffic. The vest is really important. Heck, if you know me, you know I actually gave my wife a safety vest for Christmas. Yeah. And she's gone through 3 of them now. She's on her 4th because she uses it to keep herself safe. So it is a safety culture thing, but make sure everybody can be seen. They need to have those stripes if they're in the right of way. And it makes a big difference to keeping people safe. It's easier to be seen at night if you've got on the proper equipment. Your vehicle's lights hit them, you can see the workers working at night, and it's true early in the morning and late at night as well. So we're going to show you a quick picture. How many workers can you see? Tell me when you're ready. Here we go. You can put that in the Q&A. Okay. So let's see if somebody in the Q&A wants to tell me how many workers they saw. 3, 5, 5. Most of you got it. Oh, that's pretty good. 4. There are 5 workers there if you look carefully. This was an accident investigation group. 3 of them are with the DOT. 2 of them are with the state troopers unit. And when asked where their vests were, they said they had a gun. At 55 miles an hour, you can't tell. If you don't see the person, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have problems. So everybody should be having a vest on so they can be seen day and night. It really helps. I mean, how many people on the right in that particular photograph? Okay. I got a 6. I got a 7. Got a 6. One thing about work zones, especially complicated work zones, we get all this orange barrels and signs and people get lost. If you look now that we've got the picture, there are actually 6 workers there. Okay. One's wearing an alternative color. And actually, we recommend that the flagging crew, the work zone crew, sometimes purposely wears an alternative color, the lime green, so they can be seen. And then, of course, we have somebody, probably the supervisor, actually more likely probably the engineer, who hasn't bothered to put on his vest yet because he thinks he's okay. We catch ourselves doing that. We probably should do better. But so something to be thinking about. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Some people are having their pic showed up delayed. I'll try to slow down. It could just be the Wi-Fi connection. That's always the challenge of the webinars. We'll have fun with it. Okay. So what are the qualifications for a good flagger, by the way? Let's talk a little bit about flaggers. What are some qualifications for a good flagger? Let's see what y'all think. Attentive, trained, precise, alert, because the world needs more alerts. Okay. Get off the phone. Yeah. Watching, focused. Yep. Aware of what's going on. Yeah. Pays attention, engaging. Yep. Shows respect, dresses well. Yeah. These are all qualifications for a good flagger. Okay, let's go see what I've got. Flaggers must be alert. Okay. And that's absolutely critical. We really do need to have flaggers be alert. Okay. They need to be visible, standing away from the work so they're not hidden. Okay. They need to be motivated. They need to be trained. They need to stand alone away from things. Okay. They need to face traffic because that's really what they're trying to do is they're trying to see traffic coming in the work zone. But how many times do you see workers standing facing the work zone? Oh, I want to be in the work. Their job is to protect the crew, including themselves. Okay. Now, somebody put in the Q&A they need to be certified by the union. If they're on a union job, that may be possible. New York State, interesting does not have a requirement that the flagger have a card, but they do have to be trained. Okay, it's a little different than some states that require they have a certification card, if you're wondering. But don't stand in the travel lane. I would say if you had one thing I would love to see us change, it's a habit we've gotten into, is we see the flaggers standing in the lane, and that's just a risk. I don't know currently, how many have occurred since COVID, but prior to COVID, the year before in 2019, there were 5 flaggers killed in New York State. 4 of them were standing in the lane. So don't stand in the travel lane, okay? Like this guy right here. He's not looking at the work. Maybe he's focused on the guy at the end of the work zone because he is in the middle, but it'd been real easy that person. So New York State requires their cert, Donna. Yes and no. They have to show they're trained. There's a sheet they have to show they're trained, but they don't have the card that some states require. Some states actually require they carry a card with them at all times. But we can, again, those are the nuances we can get into in the full work zone class. But again, we need to get out of this habit. We need to have flaggers not standing in the roadway. If I had to pick the one thing I'd love to see us change there. Like this guy right here. I creeped up on him. He was the first person. I was the first person in line. He never looked at me. He's wearing a vest, which is an old style vest, which is no longer the vest. And he's never looking back. The flaggers, first person they have to protect is themselves. They really need to be facing traffic and standing in such a way that if traffic does go on by, they don't get hit. One of the things we actually recommend you actually do is have a cone or two standing where you are. You can put that cone right at the edge of the roadway, make people have to get around the cone a little bit, but don't be standing in the lane. You are not a traffic cone. You do not want to get hit by traffic. Okay. Now, in terms of the flaggers' equipment, we call them flaggers, but they really are carrying a paddle, and we don't call them paddlers for obvious reasons, but they need to have a stop slow paddle. That is the primary tool. That flag that you saw earlier really is for odd intersections, maybe in the middle, maybe to stop trucks, things like that. But really the paddle is the primary device. They need to have on the proper vest. They need to have a hard hat or some signaling device. Some agencies don't require the hard hat, but the reality is the hard hat is a really good idea if you have any kind of trucks coming in hauling material. So even if your agency doesn't require it, it's really a good idea. And again, a lot of agencies require it anyway, and I think it's a really good idea myself. Why not? It's cheap, it's light, and it actually keeps you from getting sunburned. You could actually wear the one with the big brim if you want to. That'd be fine. You might need a night work flashlight. Yep, you need the suitable attire for the day, dressed properly. When it's hot or cold, people need to be dressed properly. A whistle or a horn or something to signal. The signal is for the crew. We like the whistle because it doesn't have a problem during cold weather, but some people like the air horn. The problem with any of these is you got to not be horsing on and blowing the whistle. It's a warning device when somebody goes through the work zone. You need a flag or a head sign, okay? And a flag or a head sign is one of the things the flaggers should be in charge of, because when they aren't going to be working, they need to turn that sign. So we put that in their things. Now, Ed notes a point, and you may see this. This will be coming down the pike. This is one of those changes coming down, is we're changing some requirements for hard hats to a helmet style that's got the chin strap underneath. And it will depend on the operations. In some kind of situations, you may start seeing that. But for now, put something on your head, protect yourself. And in terms of high visibility pants, Donna, that would again depend on the site. During the day, it's not required. It's called type 2 and type 3. You may see that. A type 2 vest is required in the work zone. Type 3 is required for night work and certain situations. You cannot meet type 3 by a vest by itself. So people say, I got a type 3 vest and I'm good. No, no, no. If you're doing night work, you have to have either the pants or gloves or arms. You have to be able to tell it's a human. The vest by itself isn't enough. So there's no type 3 vest by itself that will work. So at nighttime, you'll need more. You'll need the higher visibility stuff. Now, in terms of 1 and 2 flagger operations, this is probably 95% of our operations. A lot of people like to just try to do the 1 flagger operations, and that sounds great. Hey, I only need 1 flagger versus the 2 flagger operations, which is the more traditional. I will tell you right now, the one flagger operation is really supposed to only be used on a low volume, relatively low speed roadway. You really don't want it on a high speed roadway. And here's the way to think about it. If you think about that one flagger operation, that flagger, they show the flagger in the middle of the work zone. But the reality is what they need to do is walk to the end of the work zone that's the lane that's closed. So if there's traffic coming down from the top, they need to walk to the end of the work zone to stop that traffic. When they stop the other side, they have to walk to the other end of the work zone to let the people know they can't go up. If the work zone is long enough that they can't walk back and forth and stop all the traffic, you need two flaggers. So one flagger operation, the flagger actually has to keep moving back and forth. You need somebody with the ability to be flexible and move. It sounds like you're saving money, but boy, your risk goes way up and is not recommended in a lot of cases. Really think about the two flagger operations. Okay. Now, there are lots of other choices. Like for instance, at an intersection, you may need to have multiple flaggers, and you may even have to have someone with a flag in that case. Maybe you could set up a detour and get traffic away from the site completely, and then you wouldn't have to have flagging at all. Don't be cheap. I know it's hard, especially small towns, with a crew of 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. Ooh, wow, big crew. It's a challenge, I know. Maybe you work with a fellow town. Maybe you work with the village. Try to spread that burden out because flagging is really, really important. Now, of course, what I want to do is I want to finish up the last half of our session together. We want to prepare a traffic control plan, okay? I really believe in traffic control plans. On the other hand, some can get really complicated. Let's keep it simple. Now, traffic control plan is specific to the work zone for the day, okay? Okay, I've got a little fact here. I'm going to look here. I'm going to read the fact here. According to Ed Sterowitz, he's a safety guy. If you don't know him, likes to do risk management. He was our risk management guy earlier. He says in 2002, there were 441 work zone intrusions on the state system. Now, if you think about it, the state only owns about 15% of the road mileage. Now, they do have about half the traffic. So if you just double that number, that means there was about 800 to 900 work zone intrusions. So we need a good plan. If you can't have, intrusions, we don't want cars in there. So a good plan, give specific to the work zone, it gives advance notice. It allows for error and inattention, like it or not. People have got their phones and they're driving with them, or they're trying to tow the touch screen thing on the modern car. You got to allow for that. So that's why the advanced signs are easy. Move the traffic away from the hazards and away from the crew. Absolutely key. And of course, if you do that, you're going to have a safer plan. So what documentation do I need in my traffic control plan? So let's put in there, what's your documentation in your traffic control plan? You're going to have a layout. You're going to have a written plan. Okay, where your flaggers are going to stand. You may want to have an engineer stamp it, especially for detours. I think long-term work zones and anything that's going to have a detour really should be thinking about having an engineer look at it. And certainly in some cases, some agencies do require it. But again, do you have access to an engineer is something to think about. But yeah, what equipment, what personnel are you going to have? Where's the signs going to be? Yeah, the proper advanced signage. We all know these things. We go, oh, but boy, it seems like a lot of work. But turns out it's not that bad. I mean, in terms of documentation, it would really be nice to know. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. There we go. It would really nice to know the starting and ending time of the work. And you're thinking, wait a second, I don't know the ending time. Well, you start with a sketch where you think you're going to start and end, and then you modify it. Keep it simple. There's no point in getting complicated. You can do the location, what road you're on, what are the positions of the traffic control devices, the personnel, the equipment, any changes to regulatory devices. This is actually a really key one. If you cover up a stop sign or you turn off a traffic light for the day, make a note of that. Put it down in the documentation. Now, the pocket guides that we've got, and we have an app, by the way, I'll talk about a little bit too, make that job easy for the majority of your work zone. For your simple work zones, it's really easy, okay? And yes, for a long one, you'd need a detour plan. But for a simple one, you've got 5 parts. You've got your termination area, your work zone, your buffer, your transition, your work zone. They're in the pocket guide. You don't have to reinvent the wheel at all. Okay. Now, in terms of your advanced warning area, well, that's where you have your 3 signs in advance of the work zone. So you're going to document that down. You're going to have that in your traffic control plan. You're going to have your initial warning. You're going to give some more specifics, and then you're going to tell people what to do. Okay. So here's the example of the 2 flagger. We've got a road work ahead. We've got a 1-lane road coming up, and you got a flagger. That tells people what to do. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Keep it simple. Okay. The transition area is where you take people out of their lane. And this is where the most issues occur, because if they haven't seen the signs in advance, this is where you're going to have problems. Your flagger should be standing off to the side, have an escape route if something does go wrong. In this case, somebody comes through that work zone, the 2 choices are run the other lane, not a good idea. Run and hit a piece of equipment and get trapped. Really needs to be standing in a place where they're safer. Having a crash attenuator is, again, going to be recommended on all state jobs and maybe on others, but you got to have the flagger standing in a safe spot. You need a buffer area. That's the distance between where those transition cones are and the actual work. Now, again, that work area is important, but you need to have a buffer in front of that work area. In this case, there's no buffer at all. I mean, so think about putting in a buffer that if someone goes through the cones, they still have time to stop. In this case, it's what, 20 feet, maybe 50? And if someone goes past that flagger, who again is in the lane, they're going to just wind up in the work zone and hit the crew. So really think about that. And you really want to put some cones out. Cones help a lot. And where's that flagger? He should be standing, if he's one flagger, on the other side of the road. Can you really control the traffic in this case? So really could be a challenge, okay? Now, the last thing is the termination area. That's the sign that says the end of the work zone. If it's obvious, you don't have to put that sign up, but if you're not sure, put the sign up. It's simple and easy, especially long-term ones. It's probably not a bad idea. Now, how far apart do we put these signs? Well, in an urban area, 100 to 350 feet. And again, adjust to the site. Just the key is think about the old Burma shaped signs. Yeah, I know I'm dating myself, but 1, 2, 3, go. In a rural area, you need about 500 feet, by the way, just to give people time to be able to read, hey, road work ahead. Hey, 1-lane road ahead. There's a flagger. Give people time. And again, if you change from the standards, document it. In terms of placement and approval, question in there is it based on the roadway speed limit? In a rural area, we just typically go with the 500 feet because we know what people are actually doing for speed. And yes, the urban are based upon the speed limits that are involved, but also think about what people are actually driving. If they're going really fast, you might want to go with a bigger spacing to give more reaction time. The nice thing about 3 signs, it makes it pretty simple. If you've got 3 signs, you've got plenty of reaction time. And the key is good spacing. Don't go too far. And so those spacings they found have worked pretty well. And yeah, there's some speed limits in there in the pocket guide. In terms of placement removal, before you get in the work zone, you put up your 3 advanced signs, okay? You put up all your cones, your flaggers, and then you remove them in the exact opposite order. So again, the first sign you put up is the road work ahead before you've done anything else. You're then going to put up your 1-lane road, your flagger symbol, then you put the flagger out there to start controlling traffic, then you put up your cones. At the end of the day, you take the cones down and you remove things in the exact opposite order. And again, we'll go through those in more detail in the long full-day class. The critical point, hide, cover, or turn away the work zone signs when they're not needed. Now, if you're working in a road and during lunchtime, you're going to be taking some time off, but there's still a lot of workers in the area, you can leave the work zone sign ahead. That's fine. You could even probably leave the one that says road work, the second sign, but at least turn the flagger symbol. And if it's going to be a long period, maybe turn the first 2 signs. Really actually helps a lot. If the driver's going down the road and they see the signs are turned, they realize, right now they're on a break. Right now they're not actually working, but they might be later. So when they come back through and now they see the signs are turned, it really helps. On the other hand, if it's always the signs are up, even when they're not working, or worse, middle of the night, the next time someone comes through, you and I both know what they're going to do. They're going to ignore it. And they're much more likely to drive into your work zone and be one of those 400 plus intrusions on the state system and probably close to 900 on the local and state system every single year. So turn and cover them. Now, again, you can get fancy. There might be curves. You might have to adjust for things like that, but it's still the same. Give people those 3 advanced signs and really help them out. And the pocket guide, of course, shows it as being straight, so you might want to document slightly differently, okay? And can you always do that? Well, in an urban area, it could be tough. So again, you adjust, you do what you can, but think about what you really need. In this case, it says 1-lane road ahead. It probably is 2 lanes. You probably could have just gotten away with the road narrows. But what have you got? Okay. Now, a good note made by Paul about the fact that you can reduce the speed limit. Okay. You can. It's very actually relatively easy to do. You can lower the speed limit in a work zone. To do that, there's some documentation you have to do. There's some standards, but you can do that. But you make sure you cover the other signs when you put up a work zone sign. Make sure the only signs people see are the current proper signs. Okay. So we're going to prepare a traffic control plan. Now we've taken all this stuff, we've thrown a bunch at you. We're going to plan. We're going to go back to our friendly one with the flagger standing in the wrong spot. You can see this is actually on the Cornell campus, and there is the catch basin that they're working on. It's a relatively high volume roadway. It's a few, 1,000 cars a day actually. So let's just ask you, I'm going to give you some choices. I'm going to say lane closure, minor urban street, self-regulating, lane closure, 2-lane low volume road, 1 flagger operation, or lane closure on a 2-lane, 2 flagger operation. Okay. And I don't have a poll. So just in the Q&A, tell me what you think you would choose. Give me in the Q&A what you think you'd choose. You'd use the third choice, 2 flagger operation. Yep. Yeah, most of you, I hope you say 2 flagger. That really is a 2 flagger operation. Okay. It's really risky to do the 1 flagger operation with that kind of volume. Okay. And self-regulating, that's really designed for like a residential area where it's, 10 vehicles a day, and you've got to worry more about the fact that people are walking their dog than anything else. Now, in terms of keeping it simple, as an example, let's say you are working on a minor low volume road and you can get away with just a lane closure, no flagger, just we're going to close the lane down for the day. You can take that little pocket guy, walk over to your copier, put down the drawing that fits your scenario best, put it on the copier and hit go. You now have a work zone traffic control plan. And then all you have to do is fill in on the right all the details, the date, the work, the crew, the equipment. If you change the sign out, like in this case, a utility work ahead rather than a road work ahead sign, just fill those things out. And you really can do a work zone plan in less than 5 minutes that will not only hold up in court, but actually give good communication to your crew and then eventually good communication to the public. So it's a win-win. Okay. So keep it simple. It's the same information. And by the way, once you do it once, you have a record, goes in the file. Later on, somebody tries to sue. Hey, I've got everything I need to have. So it really works out really well. Keep it simple. Okay. So why are work zones important? Why do we care so much about work zones? Well, we care about them because we're in that work zone. And if you're wondering, that's a picture of my mom and my grandmother in a model airplane that my grandpapa made. You're trying to decide, should I do A or B in a work zone? Think about your family. Think about your loved ones. They're in the work zone. A lot of times they're not in the equipment. Work zones have people in them, and the drivers are driving through them. Your family, your kids may be going through a work zone. A good work zone protects everybody. Number 1 rule. Yes, we want to get the work done. We want to get it done efficiently. But think about that, which is why I know a lot of agencies will actually just shut the road down so they can be more efficient, concentrate on the work, and not have to worry about the traffic going through. But do you have local traffic that still has to get through? Are there pedestrians and bicycles? Think about all the work zone users when you're setting up, because work zones are critical. Okay. So let me ask you this in the Q&A. Tell me, why is Why is that not a good sign? We showed that earlier. Why is that not a good sign? What do you think? Doesn't tell the driver what to do. Yeah. A good sign gives good information for what people need to do. It's just a distraction. You know, if the end is near and there's zombies, then tell me where to go. Go left, go right, turn around. Good signage tells people what to do, and it needs to command respect. And there's a standard for a reason, okay? And it does desensitize people. Now, should work zone signs be reflective? And if so, why? Again, in the Q&A, tell me, should work zone signs be retroreflective and why? Let's see what you guys think. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because see, at night, and like it or not, we think, oh, we're not working at night, but it doesn't get that light. I mean, I was out for my morning walk. I slept in. So I didn't actually get out for my morning walk until almost 6:30. So yeah, it was starting to get light, but a month ago, it would have still been dark and the sun goes down. And yes, it catches your eye. It really helps. So yeah, signs should be retroreflective. And by the way, it also tells you when the sign's starting to go bad, when the retroreflectivity starts to go down. And it really does help with low light conditions. Okay? So where should this flagger be standing? Where should he be standing? In the Q&A, tell me. Yeah, on the shoulder. Mm-hmm. Out of the lane. Simple rule of thumb. If you didn't see the car for some reason because you were communicating with your fellow flagger, it should be set up so that you walk away. They might knock the sign out of your hand, but you walk away. And yeah, if you have an AFAD, by the way, if you want to know, someone put in the Q&A, put controlling the AFAD, that's an automated flagger device. Essentially, you push a button and the sign comes down or the bar comes down. In the full class, we can show you some pictures and talk about AFADs. Yeah, a lot of agencies are starting to use those, and they might be expensive to start, but long term, they can be very useful. But of course, there's the economics of everything. Okay, so what's the proper color for work zone signs? What color should work zone signs be? Let's see what you guys think. Orange with black. Yeah, orange with black. And again, are there a couple of exceptions? Yeah, there's the railroad crossing ahead sign, which is always black on yellow. And fine. And if you've got a situation where you need to put a curve in and you've only got yellow and black for that, you do that and you document, hey, because that's what we had. Good communication. And yeah, you may want to consider notifying the police for an extended project. Absolutely. Okay. And yes, not pink spray paint that can't be seen at night. And oh, by the way, covered up the stripes that were on the barrel. Okay. And who should be wearing high-vis clothing in a work zone? Everybody. Yeah. Everybody working in the work zone. And if you're getting federal aid, it's required. But yeah, everyone should be wearing one. They're relatively cheap compared to the cost of getting hit. And it really do help. And again, we recommend that the flagging crew actually wear a different color than the working crew. So if the crew is wearing orange, have the flaggers wearing lime green. If the crew wears lime green, maybe have the flaggers wear orange. Try to keep them visible. They're protecting you. They're first protecting themselves, and then they're protecting you. So it's absolutely key. Versus this guy who a vest might help, right? Okay. And again, where is he looking? He's not looking at you and I. He's looking down the road. Yes, he might just be communicating with his partner at the other end, but that's going to happen. And a good high-vis clothing is really important, even on a hot day. So what's the minimum spacing between signs in an urban area? Do you remember from earlier? Yeah, 100 to 300 is the 150. Again, nice thing is it's in the book. New York State actually has theirs down to 100 feet, which I really like. Can you always get 100 even? Maybe not, but document it, okay? Again, that depends on the speed that you've got. And in the long class, we'll go through this in a lot more detail. What's the minimum height to the bottom of any work zone sign? Yeah, 1 foot. Yeah, very good. This looks crazy. I mean, it doesn't say any respect. You really want it up there. If there's any snow, any grass, you really want it up. And again, someone that mentioned 7 feet. If it's a long-term work zone, you're going to be there more than just the day. or especially if you're going to be there for a long stretch. Think about mounting them on signs. It would either be 5 feet or 7 feet, depending whether they're in a rural or urban area. Okay. And then what are the 5 parts to our work zone? See if you guys can give me all 5. You got everybody together. You can all, collectively give me the answer. You don't have to put all 5 in. Just put 1 in, and we'll see if we get them all. The termination, at bat, advance warning, very good. Transition, very good. Okay. I'm looking for 2 more. Buffer, got buffer. Okay, got 1 more. The work itself, the actual work itself. Okay. So those are the 5 parts. The advance warning sign, the transition to move people out of their lane, the buffer, important for providing a place where people do get into the work zone, and then the work area itself. Okay, cool. So we're going to finish our last couple of slides together. Again, just throw in the Q&A. If you had this situation, and this one's an urban one, but these happen all the time. We're working on a sidewalk. We only have a sidewalk on one side of the road. Does happen. You got to do it. What are your options here? What would you think about doing? You might have to have people walk on the shoulder. Yeah. You might have to make a dedicated sidewalk temporarily. And you might have to add some cones or even jersey barrier on the roadway, depending on the traffic volume. And of course, you need to think about if you're somebody who has a hard time walking, maybe they need to put a ramp down to help them get down there. And yeah, those signs, yeah, they're not the right kind of signage. We need to have better signage, can make it more visible. Yeah. Okay, think about all the users. Okay, a bump out area from the driving lane, which means you have to warn both the drivers and the pedestrians. Okay. How about this one? You're definitely off the road in this case, so we don't have to worry about the road, but what do you see wrong here? You need to add some water to the cutter. Yeah, that's a good point. It was pretty dusty. Some more cones, some arrows, some more signs. Move the signs. Even in a off-road, what looks like it's pedestrian only, think about a buffer space, the space between where you're going to move the people out of their normal path to where the work is. A buffer space to keep them away from the work. And the one guy does have a vest on that's a little tight, I think. Might want a little bit tighter vest there, and the one guy doesn't have a vest on at all. So you're still think about being seen, okay? And yeah, things like that. You guys are probably pretty good. Let's do more that's more on the roadway itself. Okay. So what are you going to be thinking about here? You got a paving operation. What would you do in this case? You're paving a residential street. Yeah, maybe detour, close the dang thing off. Yeah, I'm okay with that. But remember, all those people who live on that road, they want to get in and out. So you really have to communicate. This is an actual case. They actually closed the road down during the day so they can pave it. But what they had to do ahead of time is notify all the people, go out ahead of time and say, hey, we're going to be paving your road. We'll let you know. Sometimes you can do it with door tags. You could do reverse 911. And you're going to let them know, hey, we're going to be limiting your access during these periods. You got to communicate. When they did it well, it worked really pretty well. When they forgot, that happened once too, people wanted to get to work and all of a sudden they couldn't get out. That didn't work too well at all. So again, think about what are your options. You're all pretty cool. And that's what they did. They closed the road off and to communicate ahead of time. Okay. So again, these are our questions. We can go through a lot more of these when we're doing our full work zone class. We have 3 more of our foundational webinars coming up over the next 3 weeks. We hope to see you on one of those. And then if you really want to get more detail on work zones, come to one of our work zone traffic control classes. We're going to be, as you can see, we're going to be around the state, both in the spring and in the fall, but we also have classes on, we're changing the name to rights and responsibilities, but powers and duties, snow and ice, work zones, running your department, pavement issues. So again, we hope to see you on the road. Maybe you'll see me. I'm actually doing drainage this spring in the sites you see there. And with that, any questions that you've got for me, go ahead. You can email them to me. You can go to our website. It's got a lot of good information. Again, if you need some of those pocket guides, just let us know. You can send an email to me. You can send it to our general email address. You can send it to Amanda, who in the chat gave you her email address. The goal here is we want to help you make good work zones. In terms of the PDHs being sent, we have to process everything and check the times and make sure people were on there. And that usually takes anywhere between a week and 10 days, depending on how busy Barbara is, because her first priority is to making sure people are registered, and she'll get them to you in a pretty quick fashion. So with that, everybody have yourself a great day. I'm going to have a late breakfast and then head over to the Association of Towns meeting, and hope to see y'all all in a webinar and a meeting this spring. Thank you very much. And thanks again, Amanda, for all the help. Bye-bye, y'all.